Okay, thank you everyone for staying like this till to the very end of the afternoon. So very happy to have this panel with all of you, with Warren and Eric. So Diane has already made the introduction of our background. So this topic is actually about the globalization. So you know that in Asia, in the last decades, there is a word called Chuhai, which means the global sea. So many of the Chinese companies that are expanding their business to the emerging and also some of the maturing market. So today we will discuss a little bit about what the giants and also the startups did in the emerging markets and the new markets we are focusing on. So why don't we make a brief introduction of ourselves? So maybe we start from Eric, so the CEO of Monkey. Yeah.
Hey guys. Yeah, it can be a little bit confusing. It says on their CEO of Monkey, and I was also introduced as CEO of Hala Group. So basically, background story is we started Hala, and Hala later turned into Hala Group, the parent company of both apps, Monkey app and Hala app. So a brief introduction of Monkey. Today I'm speaking on behalf of Monkey mostly. So Monkey is one of the most trending apps in the United States on social networking chart in the last couple years. It's currently a top 10 social app in the States that can be downloaded from App Store and Google Play. So everyone, if you haven't tried it out.
Yeah, you guys can download this app right now. So
a lot of new installs, free installs. On Monkey, we have millions of Generation Z users expressing themselves, discovering new friend on our app. Mostly people could post short videos on our platform, so there's a short video feed. At the same time, they can discover new people with video chat. So in this experience, people can match with people they could potentially be friends with within seconds. So it's a pretty exciting experience. So the team has been working on the app since the acquisition for around for almost 2 years now.
Okay, thanks, Eric. So Warren, maybe introduce a little bit about I know Amazon is a very big giant in the world and also did a lot for the startups and this economy. So maybe you can introduce a little bit about what you do in this big ecosystem to us. Thanks.
Hello. So it's a great pleasure to be here, and thank you for Grant View and Ping West to invite me to be here. So I'm happy that I don't have to explain what is Amazon Web Services here, because we're in the United States. Because oftentimes I'm based in China, and then when I talk to audience out there, and I have to explain what is AWS. Obviously, it's not very easy to understand in a Chinese context. So I work in a team which primarily works with the top venture capitals and accelerators here around the world to help the startups they invest, and also we go out and try to research those startups that we can actually help grow on the platform of AWS, particularly those with potential to grow their business globally. So yes, Amazon is a big company, but we are definitely the closest team that works with startups around the world.
Okay, thanks. The British accent is very cool. And Warren is grown up in London, so he has that kind of accent.
Because he is charged.
So why don't we start our? I forgot me. So I'll do a brief introduction of our fund too. So very short. So I come from the fund called Grandview Capital, and our fund in Chinese is called 大观资本. So we do the investment in the cross-border industry and overseas companies. So actually today there are a couple of our portfolios. They set up the booth outside, so you guys can visit their booths, the Newsbreak and One Piece. Those are our portfolios, so you can visit them. So we're focusing the emerging market and also the mature market. So Chinese, US, Southeast Asia, Indian, and also we have some portfolios in Africa and also the South America. So I'll enter into today's topics. The first one I want to discuss with you two is that from your two's different point of view, from different perspectives, why do you think the globalization is very important? And then what kind of markets or which market do you think consists of more opportunities in future? Let's see. So who do you want to take the first step? Warren? Yeah.
So just to clarify the question, so the question is which markets?
Yeah, the first thing is why globalization is very, very important, and then which market, based on your observation, you think contains more opportunity or have more possibility to grow up more startups?
Right, so to answer your first question, why globalization is important, I guess by nature every business has to grow, right? So once you have sort of matured in your home market, and it's inevitable that you have to look out and see what are the next markets. And in the case of Amazon, so we started here in the US, we started selling books online, and then we sort of pivoted into different business, and then eventually we launched Amazon Web Services, the cloud services, and we obviously have benefited a lot from the growth of the US market, and then we sort of realized that, hey, why don't we just expand this products or services that are very well welcomed by the consumers or customers here in the US to some sort of adjacent markets. You've got the UK and you've got Australia, and then later you found out, hey, probably apart from those adjacent markets, you've got those other probably not so close, not so open markets, but with huge potential, such as China. Obviously, we're driven by the business results, right? So the second question is like, which markets are great potentials?
Yes.
Right. I think obviously it depends on which industries you're playing at. So we're in the startup world, and I consider this event as more startup focused. And also there's a China angle here, right? So I personally, I've been working for AWS for about almost 4 years, and I've been always working in the startup field. And I have noticed over there in China there's a growing trend for this talented Chinese entrepreneurs and very competitive Chinese startups to grow out of the Chinese market and penetrate into markets, particularly like the Southeast Asia and India. Of course, US is always a very attractive market to most entrepreneurs in the world, but also it's very, very competitive. So if you want me to pick, it would be Southeast Asia, particularly Indonesia and India, which is, you can say it's one market, but it's also like, very fragmented, very unique, very special. It consists of like very small segments in the country.
Thanks. How about Eric?
To answer the first question, I think globalization is definitely important. Actually, I remember the first time I knew about internet, I was just amazed by this idea that I could have access to all the information in the world, right? So internet started as from the concept of globalization, right? But right now, from a day-to-day basis, you get an Uber to work, or you order from DoorDash. That's the application of the internet in a sense of hyper-local, right? But the whole concept contributes to the idea that everyone in the world has access to knowledge and information. So I think this is just a very early stage, to show the application of, internet as a, very core technology of this modern society. So it definitely has a lot of potential. I guess combined with the second, question, for example, I'll share an example on our app.
our users have the ability to be connected with users from all over the world within seconds. That's why, we definitely see, there's no, on a higher level, we don't have a preferred country that we as a team want to invest in. Because the value of our services is actually just to connect everybody. We have users from the United States that are connecting with, for example, users in the Philippines. We have, British people connecting with, Korean people. It happens all the time across our two apps, Hala and Monkey. For example, on Hala we have users from over 150 countries. And I guess that kind of explains the essence of, internet. Just providing access for everyone, and across the globe. So I think, globalization just is, it's what's good, about internet today. Globalization in the business sense is definitely going to happen and thrive in the future.
Okay, great, excellent. So one concept that you two all covered is that about the startups in the new emerging markets. They all need kind of something very good, something which they need in a certain scenario. So based on all the things did by the giants and the big companies, there is a saying that the big companies already entered many of the markets, and their ecosystem can help a lot of the startups to build up their, what we can say, the businesses better. So based on this topic, do you think that how to make a better use of the existing ecosystem of the giants to build up a better startup in the new markets? So would you please introduce a little bit about this, about the Amazon ecosystem, and also how you guys help the startups?
Oh yeah, happy to.
Yeah.
Well, the best way to leverage those resources and programs, talking to me, obviously. I know most of it, if not everything of it. But the thing is, just a very interesting insight here. So almost every big tech companies in the world, when I say in the world, literally it's like West and East both. So for example, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and back in China we've got Alibaba, we've got Tencent. They all have programs targeting startups. It's not because we're doing charities, obviously. It's really because we believe the future growth comes from those startups. Right? Today they might be a startup, like Eric's company, and then tomorrow maybe they're going to become another enterprise. So we're going to be more longer term focused rather than just looking at what is generating revenue at the moment. So typically, obviously, go to their websites. You find they have programs. And normally they have this details of, for example, I'll take cloud computing, for example. This is what I do. So we would actually provide, AWS credits to startups who were really early stage, and then the amount could be up to $100,000 if you meet certain criteria, right? So by leveraging those resources, that can definitely help you accelerate the growth of a business, and especially at a very early stage. Imagine that if you have $100,000 credits of AWS to use at the very beginning, that's a huge chunk of perks for you to start your business. It means a lot to, especially those bootstrap companies, right? So I highly suggest if you are in an early stage company or you're about to start a company, do try to research a bit on those big tech companies' website, and you'll find those web page and you'll find those content, and write an email to them. I'm happy to share my contact information in the end. So feel free to reach out to these people, because these people carry the goals of helping startups. You are their customers, and then you're definitely they're obliged to help you to grow your business. So do reach out, and you get what you want in the end.
Okay, so follow on your answer. There is a saying that so most of the Chuhai businesses, so it means the go overseas businesses using some kind of experiencing or some of the business model in the mature market with the ecosystem of the resources from the mature market and then expanding to an emerging market, which have maybe like a time machine effect. So I think I should this question to Eric. Do you observe this kind of things in the past of your experience? And how do you think that for this kind of go overseas entrepreneurship, is this make sense or you have some new observations?
I mean, time machine effect.
Yeah.
Okay. In some ways, it's true. For example, if we talk about emerging markets, I just came back from Cambodia last week. I was there last weekend, and I try to make some observations of what the local market looks like. And I talked to actually other Chinese tourists there, and they told me it's China like 20 years ago or 30 years ago. I think that's the time machine effect you're talking about. I wasn't there, 30 years ago at least, so I wouldn't know, what China looked like 30 years ago. But my point is, yes, I do have the observation that, in some emerging markets, it's just like, I guess, from all the numbers in their economy, it definitely looks like, for example, Chinese economy or, economy of Western countries, a couple of decades ago. But another observation I make is, for those services that are doing really, really well in local markets, in emerging markets, there's some extent of innovation in it. And it's definitely not exactly like, what China looked like, 20 years ago or 10 years ago. And it still goes back to the value of, innovating and building good services and products is that, you need to, really understand your customers and users to build good services. And I'm pretty sure, users in emergency economies are not quite exactly like, users in other economies. So, so at the end of the day, companies still need to, keep innovating and, tailor-make their services to build better companies. So I guess it's a kind of a combination of learning from experience and innovation. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think that leads to another topic in our discussion, which is localization. So we all know that in a local market, the localization is very important. It's including that build up local teams, find out a local business scenario, and build up a meaningful local business model. So based on your tools, different perspective, do you think localization is a very big issue for most of the startups? And if it is possible, how are we gonna overcome it?
I'll start on.
Okay.
Absolutely, it's a big issue for almost every company in the world, right?
Yeah, I know the answer is yes, and then what? and how we overcome it?
Well, I take for example, so when Amazon Web Services got into China, which was about, I think we officially launched in China almost end of 2013. By that time, Alibaba has already started as a cloud for about 4 years. So the whole sort of developer's perspective around cloud computing was actually built around Alibaba's interface design, right? And obviously, AWS product. I mean, why we have we're sort of leading the markets elsewhere is because it's also, primarily because we started early. We sort of set the table, right? We define the rules, and then people follow. So when we got into China, and then I've got a lot of comments about AWS UI UX design. So it's first, it's not Chinese enough. So like, I take pricing for example, right? So like, here in the US, we probably put a basic way of calculate pricing on-demand approach. But like, obviously you can find cheaper way of getting to so-called, we call that reserved instance by prepay for a month or 12 months to get cheaper price. But over there in China, some other platforms would actually promote the cheapest price at the very beginning just to attract your eyeballs. Right, this is a very different way of doing business over there. And another thing is, obviously we do not have enough documents over there localized in Chinese language. This is also another localization problem, right, for a foreign company to land in a local market. So for a startup, like, I was actually talking to a lot of Chinese startups who were interested in getting into the US market. A lot of them saying like, hey, you know what, I have developed my product, I'm targeting the US market, I have tested my product in the market, I've got really good stats, and then now I'm ready to launch in the US market. I was like, okay, that is great, so where did you test your product? It's like, oh, I tested it in the Philippines. Right, and then I was like, okay, well, you test in the Philippines, why don't you launch in Indonesia or the Philippines rather than start here in the US? Obviously, like, the product which works in the Philippines is not necessarily going to, or it's going to work in US, right? So if you, obviously, look at like B2C, B2B perspective, like, as a B2C, you really have to understand what customers or consumers need here in this local market and design your products around that theme and make sure you've got the perfect product market fit. And we have challenges over there in China as a big company. I'm pretty sure that as a startup, if you want to launch in the foreign market, and product market fit or localization in a way you call it, is super critical. Eric, you launched your products like in the US, in Southeast Asia, and you probably have more to say.
Indeed, we have. Actually, our other app, Hala, is localized in 16 languages. We're available in most all major countries in Asia, Europe. We're even, I think we're localized in Turkish. Definitely a lot of countries that I personally have never been to. But here's what we say about localization. I think localization is definitely a better term for more standardized services. For example, AWS, for example, like search engines. To us, localization is more about, we don't only localize language or the text in the product, we localize the experience. And whenever we try to build better experience for the local users, we really think from their perspective and do the research that's needed to be done to really build a better service. I'll take Monkey as an example. For Monkey, we never had a team that's called Localization because, Monkey, the app, building from the ground up, has been, a trending social app in the United States. So we spent zero efforts on localization, but we spent a lot of time trying to, understand our users, because usually, our users the average age for Monkey user group is, probably 18 or 19, and I definitely don't look 18. I probably look like 20, right? But all I'm saying is we just try to build our services, from the perspective of our users, try to understand them. And the language part is only a very, very small fraction of, of what we do. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think a trend we discussed before is that from the mature market expanding to the emerging markets, which is the new markets. But there is another trend that typically you guys maybe more close to, is that from the Chinese market expanding to US market. I think many of the entrepreneurs here today also from this kind of from China to US. those two big markets are very different, and also both of them are very, we should call them mature markets. So from this logic, from China to US, is there any big trend, or do you think is this a big opportunity for most of the startups that they should have a try in the future?
You want to comment first?
Yeah, you do this kind of thing, you know.
Yeah, we have, so we have an LA office, we also have a Beijing office. So we operate in 2 different countries that are in a pretty bad relationship right now. But yes, I think it's, there's a trend of, companies working at, different locations. I think, remote work is like a thing right now. That's why that contribute a lot of growth at, companies like Zoom. I guess, even going beyond, US, China, or, kind of China exporting, models and, good business models, or, even labor to other countries. I guess what I want to say is, for startups nowadays, we think of so many ways to optimize our flow, to optimize our productivity, to take advantage of what's best at, each market to build the best service, right? You either do that to lower your margin, to hire your margin, to save your costs, or to hire the best people, to hire the best talents you can find in your target market. We consider ourselves, actually, within our company, at least within our team, we don't consider ourselves a Chinese team or a US team. We consider ourselves a more global team. And we're all, global citizens in a sense. And I definitely, that makes a lot of sense right now, especially even what I've heard, from my friends in the Bay Area, there's a trend of, just people and companies, hiring talents from all over the world and remote work. I'm a huge believer in this, way of working.
Okay, thanks, Eric. How about Warren?
Sorry, Eric, your view is like there is a trend for Chinese companies to come into the US or not?
To come into Chinese market?
No, the Chinese companies to come into the US.
Come into US.
Like I said, there is a trend. Yes, there is a trend. We don't focus on that trend particularly because we don't see this direction. We see this, offices in both locations as a way to coexist, right?
Right. Just to make the discussion a bit more fun, so I'm going to disagree with that.
Great. You have the last 3 minutes.
All right. Okay. Forgive me, and to be completely honest, I do not see a trend for Chinese companies to get into the US market. When I say a trend, I do not see there are more Chinese companies who would like to move into the US market compared to, let's say, 5 years ago. I definitely have seen cases, Chinese companies or startups were interested in the US market. But typically, I would say I have seen, okay, like this. If you are relatively later stage, when I say later stage, let's say post-Series A, like Series B-ish companies, I see more B2B startups would like to land in the US because obviously they have seen, let's say, they have realized enough growth in the home market, they're thinking of growing their business, let's say, in another market, and obviously US is big enough and attractive enough for them to be here. And then as a B2B business, it makes more sense to conduct, let's say, a project-based work, so it's relatively a light touch. You don't really have to have a local team here, you just need to have clients and projects, right? For a B2C perspective, I have seen companies who are interested in doing business in the US by basically starting in the US rather than starting in China and then have its product launch or land in the US and operate from China. So again, to summarize, I do not really see there are more and more companies coming from China to the US, but if I really have to say, I've seen relatively more later stage companies in the B2B sector to want to expand in the US, and in B2C sector, and my suggestion is really if you want to target a US company, you better just start from here.
Okay, great. So I think our time is up, and thank you for the discussion about the globalization and localization. So I know there are lots of the friends here want to discuss with you guys about the experience of doing startups and helping the startups to build up a better ecosystem. So maybe we can communicate off the stage. Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.